समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
What does Donald Trump's war on Venezuela mean for the world order? Will China take its cue from Trump and go next for Taiwan? Where does this leave Putin's claims over parts of Ukraine? And indeed, what does it mean for Indo-US relations with the distracted and even more aggressive than before Donald Trump? I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, these are images that the world has looked on in disbelief, in shock, with incredulity. Trump basically ordered American special forces into Venezuela, captured Venezuela's president, and presented him before a US court. No matter how unpopular the Venezuelan leader may have been, it was, in this moment, the collapse of any rules-based order. Many top diplomats believe that this will now be a cue for other world powers to behave in as unilateral a fashion. China, for example, could go next for Taiwan, and the Americans might well look the other way. Trump, who claimed that he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize, has actually just unveiled the first global war of 2026. What impact will this have on the world order? What will it mean for the other big powers, China and Russia? And for us here in India, where the government's response has been cautious and muted, what does it mean for Indo-US relations? That trade deal is still showing no signs of fruition. We still have the Pakistanis cozying up to Trump. And we have a volatile situation in Bangladesh, where Bangladesh and the Pakistani military are now basically talking about a deeper defense cooperation pact. There are all kinds of implications for us in India, for our neighborhood, and for the world at large. And to talk about some of these developments, I want to introduce three very distinguished guests today. We can bring them up. Chidanand Rajghata, a veteran journalist and author, is joining us from the US. Good to see you, Chidanand. Always a pleasure. Military veteran General Sharma is with us. Welcome back to the program, sir. And after a long gap, Ambassador Dilip Sinha is back with us, and we've missed having you with us. So welcome back to the program. In the midst of all of this chaos, if it can be called that, it's a mild word for what we saw unfold in Venezuela. Trump found time to make and reiterate another claim on how Prime Minister Modi wanted to please him, on how the Indian envoy, Lindsey Graham, claimed went to his house and urged a kind of deal, as it were, and assured the Americans that Russian oil was being cut back. I'm just going to play out that Trump statement and then begin our conversation. Take a look.
I really do believe that what he did with India is the chief reason India is now buying substantially less Russian oil. So I hope we pass this bill soon. And after this,
they wanted to make me happy, basically. He wanted to. Modi's a very good man.
Yes.
He's a good guy. He knew I was not happy, and it was important to make me happy. They do trade, and we can raise tariffs on them very quickly, and it would be
people are
very
afraid
bad
of that.
for them.
Modi wanted to make me happy. He's a good man. In the meantime, US filings, publicly available information, Chidanand, do show how India used and Pakistan also used lobbying firms hired by both countries. This is normal, routine practice in the United States of America. The filings vis-a-vis Pakistan show how Pakistan tried perhaps to get some American intervention during Operation Sindoor. The filings vis-a-vis India seem to show an outreach even on the 10th of May, the day that the ceasefire was announced. We do not know if these meetings or this outreach was before or after the announcement of the ceasefire. This is also creating some headlines here, as is the chaos that Trump has unleashed on the world. What's going on? I mean, how are all of you sitting there in Washington looking at all of this?
Oh, with bemusement. Well, this is Donald Trump in action. Look, this is, a naked expression of American power. And let's understand that, the US has always done this. This is not new, actually. It's just that some presidents have done it quietly. Some have been understated. And Donald Trump is, out there. He loves talking about it. You've now heard of the expression, the Donro Doctrine. So this was defined almost 2 centuries ago by the 5th president, James Monroe, who said, the Americas are our sphere of influence, and we will not brook any interference at that time from European powers that colonized large parts of America, Latin America particularly. And then a century later, Theodore Roosevelt also asserted that, except that Roosevelt used the famous expression, speak softly and carry a big stick. And Donald Trump's philosophy is speak loudly and carry a big stick. And he's done that.
So you're saying what's happened in Venezuela is not really unique to Trump. There's a long documented history of American interference around the world.
Absolutely, in several other countries in Latin America over decades. Ronald Reagan went in. Literally every president has tried to assert or maintain American influence in Latin America and South America. And guess what? I mean, this is not new to big powers. I mean, besides all the pearl clutching that we will do, the fact is big powers do this. Russia has done it in Ukraine, in Crimea, right? And, if India had, assessed it, and if it had the means, it would affect regime change in, I don't know, in Bangladesh, in Maldives. Large powers do this. And much as, we all yell and scream and say, oh, my God, he's gone in to Venezuela and kidnapped, to put it bluntly, or abducted its leader. These kind of things are pretty common in this part of the world. And the United States has done it several times. And one thing about Donald Trump, I think you really have to appreciate, this man is incredibly transparent. There's nothing hidden about his agenda. Absolutely nothing hidden. Right? I mean, he says openly, and his administration officials are now saying, we reserve the right to go into Greenland and take Greenland. And don't be surprised if they do it in a week or two, or,
So for everybody who's saying this is Trump's chaos unleashed on the world, you're actually arguing that if you just look back at history, the Americans have often done this. And in Bangladesh, our volatile neighborhood, the regime change is again seen to have been encouraged by the Americans, but actually in the Biden years, just for example. But it's just very much more out there with Trump. With Trump, everything is just much more out there.
Absolutely.
But as a policy, you don't find it audacious in terms of a Trumpian view of the world.
There's no policy. I mean, the only policy, look, the predominant sound in Trumpian America is ka-ching. It's all about money. And he's very transparent and very open about it. Have you ever heard him talk about democracy or nation building? Have you ever heard him say, we'll build schools or hospitals or institutions in any of the countries the US has gone into? No, he only talks about money. He says, we'll be rich. I mean, look at his statements on Venezuela. He's very open that it's all about oil. I mean, it's not about bringing Maduro to justice. That's just a small part of it. And in fact, it's a very, he keeps talking about, God knows how many Americans have died from drug use, but the drug actually Americans are dying of is fentanyl. And fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela. Venezuela's, product is cocaine, Venezuela and Colombia. The fentanyl comes from China. And trust me, Trump would never take on China. You'd never.
I'll get to China in a moment. Because this is, the openness with which Trump has conducted itself. Even if I accept your point that the Americans have done this before more than once, Ambassador Sinha, has consequences for the world we live in right now. Many people believe that Trump has an idea of a G2 world in which America and China are the two great powers. You have China, possibly now next eyeing Taiwan, and you possibly have a situation where Trump may not get overly involved. Let's also remember that there was an official Chinese delegation in Venezuela the day that this operation took place. Do you agree with Chidanand that this is just America being America? This is not Trump being Trump. This is America being America. Is there a difference between the two?
Well, no, I completely agree with him that this is America being America. The only difference being, as he himself pointed out, earlier presidents would garb their actions in all kinds of high principles of international law and democracy. Trump does it very blatantly. But the fact remains that in this particular case, it is not just oil. There is also the factor that Venezuela had become a base for his three key adversaries, Russia, China, and Iran. All three of them were present militarily in Venezuela and were strengthening their position, apart from the 2030 Cubans who were there in the close protection team of Maduro. So there is that strategic angle as well to the Venezuela action, which should not be completely ignored. But what is the point that you ask about China? The risk that we seem to find is that earlier, the US foreign policy was global in nature. It talked about protecting the whole world and providing security to everybody. Now it seems that Trump is shrinking himself back to the Western Hemisphere and perhaps leaving space for the two other powers, not just China, but Russia as well. He is actually telling Zelensky to surrender to Russia, because I think he believes that Russia also is entitled to a certain sphere of influence, and so is China. China has not expressly said so, but as you point out, in the case of Taiwan, it is possible that that he may just look the other way if China attacks Taiwan. In which case, the possibility of a Yalta-type division of the world into three parts is very possible. I think that's one of the reasons why the Europeans are very concerned, and they are meeting just, I think, now or in a day or two to
yeah, but look
discuss
at the Europeans. I mean, there's this clip from the UK where Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK, is being asked again and again and again, how he views what has happened, and he's completely paralyzed. He's not able to criticize Trump. I mean, can the Europeans really galvanize themselves against Trump, according to you, Ambassador Sinha?
Not just Europeans. I think the whole world is paralyzed. If you look at the debate that took place yesterday in the Security Council, I listened to practically all the speakers, and I found that very few actually condemned America. The list is very small. Colombia, Russia, China, Chile, Mexico, Cuba. Brazil used the word rejects, didn't use the word condemn. The others expressed deep concern, including Denmark, which is concerned about Greenland. It expressed deep concern. Latvia expressed deep concern. So there is hesitation all over the world in condemning America, because everybody knows that Trump is he can go ballistic. So the point that he made that Prime Minister Modi is trying to please him, well, that is true. The whole world is trying to keep him quiet, and let's not provoke him.
I bring in General Sharma at this point. India's statement was very guarded, and as some might argue, that's fair. Not our monkey, not our circus. Why should we get involved? We've got to look out for our own interests. Our main opposition party took a stand different from that of the government. The Congress did talk about America's overreach. I'm paraphrasing here. We also had a pretty bizarre statement from Prithviraj Chavan, former Maharashtra Chief Minister, saying next are the Americans going to come in and kidnap Modi? I mean, just like there's some sort of ludicrous discourse going on. But the more serious question is, if the world, which is parts of the world that are more directly impacted by this are being muted, do you agree with the fact that India has taken an extremely cautious, not going to get involved in this issue approach?
Thank you, Barkha. And I think, what we have done is the right. The rationale is that, you see, when you are yourself saying that the world did not go about criticizing him, except for a couple of regimes which said what is done is not right, everybody else has been guarded. Even Denmark, which is nearly being threatened by a map which came out from Mrs. Miller, which shows the star and stripes on the Greenland map, did not criticize in that form. So we too far away, and as it is here announced 1 month ago, that in the NSS that the Western Hemisphere will be our focus, and we will do So something was expected. In the course of last 2-3 months, the quantum of ships that he had placed outside Venezuela was nobody's business. We were not actually, anybody who was reading it, we were anticipating something ought to happen. But that he would, when you use the word kidnap or you use the word abduct or whatever they say, somebody saying capture. So, one didn't expect it, but something was in the offing, because you have so many aircraft carriers and you have so many aircraft brought across into the bay opposite Venezuela. Something was going to happen. So it was expected that something is going to happen. Whether something happens to Colombia next, or okay, that's something to see. So, to answer you, I think we need to be guarded. Let's see how things progress. It's too early to start saying that, what happened is right or what happened is wrong. International law, and the debate, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Sinha, was categoric that it was against international law. The statement given out by Jeffrey Sachs was very important. He listed out the larger number of similar actions done, but between 1950 and 1989 by the United States, and also elsewhere. In the course of last 1 year, 2025, America has 7 countries. Why we say he's retreating to Western Hemisphere, 7 countries have been targeted by bombing by the United States in this 1 year. So, to say that even Western Hemisphere not right, but the answer is that might is right. Nobody can hit Kim across in North Korea. He's got nuclear weapons, so he carries the day. So I think what it is being told to world is that, kindly get your weapons across. If you have it in the basement, bring it on the floor. If you have a screwdriver away, then tighten the screwdriver and show that you have the power to reckon with. Otherwise, might is right, and if might is right is going for last 2 centuries, well, everybody has to be prepared for it.
Well, let's sort of zoom in on what this might mean in terms of ramifications for India. I'll start with you, Ambassador Sinha. No immediate or direct ramifications, obviously, from the capture of Maduro, and that's America's own equation with Venezuela. But an immediate sort of oil wars intensification. Reliance today issued a very interesting statement rebutting Bloomberg, saying that they were not sort of standing by for the arrival of Russian oil. You juxtapose that with what the Americans are claiming, that more quiet assurances from India that Russian oil purchase will be cut back. Trump brazenly saying Modi just wants to make me happy, and trade deal nowhere near fruition. What is all of this adding up to for our interests?
Well, in the case of our interests, the most important thing is that oil prices should not go up. The tariffs that the US has imposed on our exports should be removed, especially the penalty of tariff because of buying of Russian oil. These, I think, 2 are imperative factors for us. And the other is that there should be no backdoor deal between America and China on spheres of influence. That would be disastrous for us because we, as it is, we know that China is extremely aggressive in this region. We have seen tensions ties between China and Japan. In this kind of a situation, any tension in the Indo-Pacific region will be harmful for us. And that can happen if China feels that America is not going to intervene if it invades Taiwan. Taiwan is on top of China's list, but number 2 on China's list is Arunachal Pradesh. So we must be very careful and very alert to that danger.
When you say Arunachal Pradesh is on top of China's list, obviously we have seen that muscle flexing when UK-based professional from Arunachal Pradesh was basically stopped in Hong Kong and almost tormented. I remember interviewing that young lady. But when you say Arunachal is on top of China's list, what do you mean? Do you actually mean in terms of military aggression or just the usual sort of muscle flexing, saber rattling?
Well, not top of the list is Taiwan. But Arunachal is right thereafter. Remember, this Tawang issue has been commented upon by China because we held a little conference, a Buddhist conference in Tawang, and China said that India is trying to claim credit for the 6th Dalai Lama who was born in Tawang. So these are issues on which China is extremely sensitive, and China has successfully used its position as a permanent member of the Security Council to get several UN organizations to treat Arunachal Pradesh as disputed territory. And in several maps of the world, you will find Arunachal Pradesh shown as disputed territory. Even though Arunachal is completely within Indian administrative control, there is no question of any dispute on the fact that Arunachal is a part of India. The only country that disputes that is China, and yet China has been successful in getting several international organizations and international maps to show Arunachal as disputed territory.
Chidanand, let's also talk, while there is this, I think, legitimate concern that Trump and China could cut a deal, and that has direct implications for our region. Let's also talk about the sort of lobbying games that are playing out in Washington. We have some of those details available now because US law, one, lobbying is legal. It is also encouraged. I think this needs to be said because for us, it's very alien to imagine that lobbying is legal. One is lobbying is legal, two, it's encouraged. But we now have filings available. Filings of the lobbying firm used by the Pakistanis, filings for the lobbying firms used by us. And there's a lot of reporting going on it here in India as well. I don't know if you had time to look at it, but basically two things seem to emerge. One is that on the day of the ceasefire, this is first reported in the Hindu. On the day of the ceasefire, there was an outreach or an attempted outreach with three key officials, including Ricky Gill, who's been awarded by Trump for his role in this role, imagined or otherwise, in this Operation Sindoor time, and the Pakistanis bending over backwards, seeking almost 60 connections in that same short time period, perhaps seeking American intervention to somehow halt Operation Sindoor. Are you following these lobbying sort of details, and what can you tell us about them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual. If you remember about, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago, we reported extensively on what kind of lobbies were employed, actually. It was very interesting. I remember writing a story called Schiller versus Miller, because Pakistanis employed, Kurt Schiller, who was Trump's bodyguard. And the Indians went with Jason Miller, who was actually, Trump's campaign manager at one point.
And they were both former Trump aides. I mean, it's just actually...
Right.
Influence peddling made legal.
Absolutely. And peddling to the extent that it gets very close and personal to Trump. In the old days, you hired big lobbying firms, and I remember Akin Gumps, was hired by India. It actually goes back to the 90s when actually we used, very personal connections on the Indian side. I remember back early 90s, there was a one-man lobbying. It was not even a firm. It was an individual named Janaki Ganju, who was close to the Gandhi family, who was India's lobbyist in Washington when I first came here. And it was during the Narasimha Rao government that India formally hired, I think Siddharth Shankar Ray was the ambassador. They formally hired a lobbying firm. But we are now back to personal connections, because that's what works with the Trump administration. It's access, it's personal access. So
there's your piece, Miller versus Schiller. Who's the real Trump whisperer?
Right. Yeah. So now we're back into this very personalized this thing, because everything about Trump is personal. Even with Venezuela, with every operation, it's all about him.
The New York Times reported that the video of Maduro dancing was the final straw for Trump, and it irritated him so much he sent the forces in.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of. It's very funny. By the way, just an amusing aside. If you remember, during the 2016 campaign, there was this former Miss Universe from Venezuela who surfaced, Alicia Machado. And it was a hilarious story, because back in 1990s, when Trump bought the Miss Universe pageant, Alicia Machado was the first Miss Universe, and apparently she put on a lot of weight, and Trump called her Miss Piggy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. He called her Miss Piggy. And
I do remember. Now that you remind me, I do remember.
Venezuela, by the way, before Trump bought the Miss Universe pageant, Venezuela produced a series of Miss Universes. I think they have the maximum number of Miss Universes, by the way, in the record. And then because she was Latina and she had an accent, he called her Miss Housekeeping. And he really has this thing about, Latin American countries, about African countries. He doesn't like them, and he's very open and transparent. He's very contemptuous about these countries. And Venezuela really irritated him, because, it was for good or bad, doing its own thing, like Ambassador Sinha pointed out, with China, with Russia, with Iran. And Venezuela has had long ties with the United States and very close ties in the oil industry. You've lived in the US, so you'd remember there's a gas company called Citgo. I mean, there are Citgo gas stations everywhere in the US. It's Venezuelan owned. And when the Venezuela nationalized its oil industry, and throughout, I think Chevron still stays there, but the other companies had to exit, ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips. But when Venezuela nationalized the oil industry, the U.S. retaliated by taking over Citgo. They liquidated Citgo, and it was, I think, bought by some U.S. interests. So there's this whole oil thing. And incidentally, Venezuela also produces heavy crude. And there are any number of U.S. refineries which process only heavy crude. And the U.S. itself does not have heavy crude. I mean, in Louisiana, there are half a dozen refineries which process only heavy crude. U.S. more and more U.S. Output is light crude, particularly that from fracking. The only other heavy crude comes from Canada, with which U.S. has adversarial relations. So there are any number of refineries in Louisiana looking, to process heavy crude. So there's that whole oil angle. And to be honest, everything is about money and business here. It's not about, democracy, nation building. I mean, aside from, reasserting its influence in the American hemisphere, it's also about money and commerce. And the fact is, the United States consistently, the US has literally wiped out India's shrimp industry. Why? Because they suddenly realized, there are farmers shrimp farmers in Louisiana who are going down under.
Yeah.
Right? There's this whole revival of shrimp industry in Louisiana because of the tariffs. And Louisiana is one of the poorest American states, and there is a genuine feeling among the MAGA people that we should lift up our poorest states. So all this plays into the largest part of we need to reassert American influence. There are genuine economic considerations.
Yeah, but the idea, Chidanand, and I want to bring this to General Sharma. The idea when Trump first came was that the man is going to be so distracted and obsessed with domestic concerns that MAGA is about making America great again at home. But actually, what Trump is demonstrating is that it's also about showing that America can be great again on the world's, in his mind, great. Can be the global bully that it has often been accused of being on the world stage as well. And this has implications for everybody in the world, including India. So, General Sharma, I want to bring you in. As we speak, firstly, the White House has been releasing images like the one that you see on your screen. These are official releases from the White House, and, X handle, just unimaginable for the way we are used to conducting public discourse. But put that aside. As we speak, you have a high-level contact between Bangladesh and Pakistan, military to military, that is taking place as we speak. Bangladesh has been cited by many, many top diplomats as an example of possible American regime change, never owned, never claimed, like Venezuela, unfolding in the Biden years. Now, look at this from an India point of view. How many balls are up in the air? You have, as Ambassador Sinha said, the concern that in exchange for Trump looking the other way, China might go in for Taiwan. The Americans and the Chinese cut a deal. You have Chinese interests in Bangladesh. You have Chinese interests in Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. You have China and Pakistan, Pakistan being almost a vassal state of China. You have Pakistan cozying up to both America and Bangladesh. I mean, from an Indian point of view, these are a lot of potential security challenges right there.
So, Barkha, it's a turbulent world, yeah. This is not the kind of world we have seen it. We have to be prepared for, which I said last time also on your show. This is not a time to write minute sheets and noting sheets and to say we have a 10-year program. It's a daily feature. Every day, evening, something new comes up on some part of the world which affects us, and we have to be on top of it. So the point what you're raising is that there is a dynamism at flow here, and we have to be prepared for it. Now, whether if the Pakistan and Bangladesh are shaking hands, and so be it. Yeah, there is a vacuum created in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is probably unable to meet also the expenditure on the weaponry and all that ports that the Chinese had built into Bangladesh. So it was advantageous now to take to take on Pakistan. Pakistan has also been supplying to many other countries. So be it, we have to keep a watch for it. These things would happen, and these things are nothing new that is happening. So I would say that let me put it that there is in the region there is a whole lot of dynamism, a whole lot of differences happening, whole lot of challenges happening. We are in Myanmar is having elections, Bangladesh is having election next month. Nepal is around the corner for having elections here. There is and elections are also not simple elections. They are most difficult elections that are going to happen here, and God alone knows how things would change. We can't interfere, and we can't take a step back and not being involved into what's going to happen in these countries. So that's one part. The second is that about see, China has been spoken of earlier. The fact of the matter is Chinese is a founded country. They are bedded in. They are not jerky in responses to most issues, unlike what the Americans do. Firstly, the Americans to do this operation would have taken at least 5 to 6 months of training. It can't be done in one day because they created a replica of the entire palace where the president stays, and how there were 500-600 aircrafts in the air. There were so many things moving. It's a joint operation. So the decision may have been taken 1 month ago, but the whole planning would have started maybe in August, if not earlier. So to say that it is knee-jerk, it's not knee-jerk. But Chinese are thinking of Taiwan for a very long time. They have not been. If Taiwan was Venezuela, something would have happened. The Americans would have done it, but Chinese have not done Taiwan as yet because they are bedded in. They know that it is not an easy proposition. See, I can take a mind back to Somalia, where the Americans did an operation when Clinton's time, and there was a movie also made, Black Hawk Down or something. And President Clinton got a flack on his face, and what the hell were the American troops doing in Somalia, where most of the Americans could not spell the word of Somalia, know where Somalia is on the map. But they were 17, 18. I know the bodies were dragged out of the helicopter into the streets of Somalia.
Yeah,
the operation could have been as tough as Black Hawk. So the decision taken to go ahead with the Venezuelan operation meant that a whole lot of details have been gone into, and they didn't want a repeat of what happened to American helicopter in Iran or what happens in Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
Say any other country also trying to do something similar. When we say, okay, equation can be drawn across Zelensky being picked up, or Taiwan happening, or Arunachal Pradesh happening, it's not a simple proposition. You have to be prepared for the worst to happen. Things can go wrong, and when things go wrong, the local population will not give a pat on the back. He said, why the hell were you trying a thing like this? Why did you go into this one? So I would not say that we should be taking it that there is an equation established now between United States and Venezuela, and this can be replicated into many other parts of the world. I don't think it's so simple.
Okay, let me just pick up a comment for you, Ambassador Sinha, because you said it would be disastrous if Trump cut a deal with China, and that deal could rest on what China plans next with Taiwan and how the Americans respond. We have one of our regular viewers saying Barkha Trump's interest lies in gold, silver, rare earths, and geopolitical dominance. This is Prasad. His capture of Venezuela and flirtations with Greenland is to remove Chinese leverage on USA. Is that how you see it? Or do you believe that the domino impact from this is going to be more sudden than what General Sharma suggests, that China is a slow, very careful mover in these ways?
I agree that China is a very careful mover, but the fact is China is a mover. Look at China's behavior in South China Sea. There it is in a stronger position against the Philippines, and therefore is bullying Philippines. There's a confrontation taking place in South China Sea almost every day. In the case of Taiwan, China realizes that Taiwan is a much stronger enemy, and there is an American commitment to defend Taiwan. Therefore, China is a lot more careful about Taiwan. But I can assure you that the day China realizes that it can take Taiwan without much of a problem, it will do so. It has said so in so many words. Taiwan has to protect itself. And that's one of the things that almost all countries in the world are realizing now in these troubled times. The defense expenditure has risen to global record of $2.7 trillion, the aggregate defense expenditure. So all countries are now increasing defense expenditure, especially the countries in Europe. Now, that same thing will apply to India also. Now, in the case of India, there are two things that are very important. One is to get our defenses in a strong position, because right now, although we are spending a lot on defense, we are essentially buying our equipment, which makes us extremely vulnerable to foreign pressures. The other is the trading system has collapsed. America insists that trade should be balanced, which means that we have to balance our trade with China. And we can do that only if we increase our own manufacturing. So we have to strengthen our manufacturing and our defenses to make ourselves, to protect ourselves from any possible contingency. Now, General, the people may quite right. China may not be aggressive. China may become a quiet country, which is very good. But we have to be prepared for the worst. We can't possibly plan for a situation where China is not going to do anything. And the other is that internationally, we have to realize that earlier at one time we depended upon Russia, one time we depended upon America. These superpowers are playing their own games. And in these games, we are not part of the negotiations. So here we have to look at other smaller countries and see if we can build alliances with them to strengthen our position multilaterally.
Before I give Chidanan the last word, General Sharma, in terms of this not being an age of minute meetings and, sort of 10-point agendas, the dynamism in the security challenges, what would be your most immediate concern from a security prism?
Look, about 3 months ago, which is I think 3rd of September, 4th of September, the Pakis signed a deal with a Chinese company called PSAT. And they bought 20 satellites off the shelf in the low Earth orbit. And they have actually gone across to say to see India properly, they'll require 52 satellites. They're getting the balance of them in 2026. Now, as we see what happened in Sindoor, and as we see what are the Pakis modernization in the course of last 6 months, and how the Chinese are modernizing, I think our primest concern, even before we talk platform, is our ability to see and our ability to react to what we see. But today is an era where anything that is visible will be hit. And anything that will be visible will be hit with precision. So my primest concern today will be that we need to get as many low Earth orbit satellites on the air so that we are able to see and discern what's happening. So our, what we say, transparency of the battlefield becomes the primest of concerns that I personally have. I said we must do something. And second is the issue of what the Americans called A2AD, or anti-access area denial. Now we have to, we can coin a different word for it, or we can coin, the Chinese called it counter-intervention. We have to be prepared and have resilience against the first strike options if somebody will have it. As Pakis also showed, they had planned for a first strike option. Now, we have to prepare for these two issues. Battlefield transparency, I think, takes the cake for us on preparing ourselves so that a man who's standing anywhere has an iPad in his hand and is able to see the operational and the intelligence picture at wherever it is. That being delayed actually makes the whole reaction game, the kill chains and the kill webs, all delayed accordingly. So that becomes, I think, the prime concern for me.
Yeah. Okay. We are entering a new era of warfare, and I think that's what General Sharma is reminding us: the ability to see what will happen if China and Pakistan converge, if America and Pakistan also have a deal. If Pakistan is able to cut a deal simultaneously with both of these two great powers, it has direct implications for India. Chidanan, we actually polled our viewers, on the Indian response to Venezuela. And just before we give you sort of the last word, we asked our viewers, how should India respond to the capture of Venezuela's president and Trump's oil and tariff pressure? Again, this is not sort of, representative of any one or two kinds of people. It's just an online poll. 36% of our viewers believe India should stay silent and maintain strategic balance. 28% do feel that we should have condemned the action only 5% believe that we should align closer with the United States of America. And then I can't actually see the last one, which is prioritize energy security and continue Russian oil imports is 31%. So that's interesting that only 5% people believe that we should align closer with the US. Most seem to be talking about either status quo or not giving up on the Russian sort of counterbalance that exists at this point. Just a last word to you. How have Trump's actions gone down domestically? I mean, the guy's going to be gone in 2 years, right? And we're going to have to see what happens in the midterms. How is all of this playing out domestically, and how are you sort of seeing what might happen next?
Yeah, not well. And, and not well because this is actually a deeply divided country. And then, look, all said and done, it's still a thriving democracy. And this is a country which, opposed the Vietnam War. At the height of the Vietnam War, people were chaining themselves to the White House fence. So dissent is natural. There has been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of questions. And it's very obvious, the two aspects, like I said. One, it's very personal with Trump. It's all about getting rich, about helping the oil corporations, about, he's talked very openly that U.S. oil companies, Chevron and ExxonMobil and all will go back into Venezuela. Chevron continues to be there, but it's one is energy and energy security. It's not that the U.S. doesn't have oil. The U.S. is completely self-sufficient, exports vast amounts of energy. But like I explained, there's also this whole refinery capacity which they want to make use of. So there's an economic rationale that he's tried to explain. I don't think, too many Americans are convinced, because even his own MAGA constituency, if you remember, is more non-interventionist in nature. But when you put it this way, that, hey, Louisiana, it'll create a lot of jobs. There are 6, heavy crude refineries in Louisiana. It'll create a lot of jobs. Then a lot more MAGA people are on board. But by and large, there has been widespread, condemnation within the U.S. that this is a misadventure, and we don't even know how it'll all pan out. Actually, I mean, what happens next, right? Because not all of Venezuela has signed on. They're trying to effect. They have effected a regime change, but the new regime, is still. It's all very murky. There are a lot of Maduro people still in power. So there are questions. I mean, are we going to, get into another Iraq kind of situation or Afghanistan kind of situation? Trump has said, I don't mind boots on the ground, but the hard answer is no, the U.S. does mind, because it's a minefield, Venezuela. There are a lot of cartels, a lot of gangs, a lot of weapons. So things are very murky. But look, the one message that he has broadcast to the world is he doesn't mind striking, and he doesn't care about world opinion. He just doesn't care. I'm going to be waking up every morning, and the first thing I'll check is Greenland. Good morning, Greenland, because they're out there. And I think the general or ambassador mentioned Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife. Actually, this morning, Stephen Miller went on air and said, of course, we have the right to take Greenland. This is Trump's, White House principal aide, telling openly. And there is nothing the Europeans can do. What? They're going to say, oh, you'll break up NATO? Who cares? Trump has already said, I don't care about NATO. He doesn't care about NATO. So, yeah, he's really happy to throw NATO under the bus.
I mean, it really does underscore the irrelevance of Europe. It underscores the irrelevance of NATO.
Yeah,
there are 3 great powers left in this game, China, Russia, and America. I mean, that is it.
And America wants to be one. By the way, I did a little math. If you add the geographic landmass of Greenland to the United States, the US becomes the second largest country in the world after Russia.
Really?
Absolutely. The Greenland is a fairly significant landmass. If you add Canada, remember, Trump has also said he wants to take over Canada. If you
now I think we're letting our imagination run away.
No, excuse me. See, that's the mistake we all make. We think it's imagination, but this is not. Trump has said it. And remember what, who was it? Rubio actually said, when he says something, please take him seriously, because he means it.
Any reactions to this? I was going to close, but it's so interesting. Ajay Sharma, I saw your hand go up on the boots on the ground point. Yeah.
So Barkha, I think, wherever the Americans have intervened in the course of recent history of last 5-6 decades. They intervened nicely. They did a fantastic job of intervening. But what next? At the next, they failed miserably in most of the places. So the fact of the matter is that they've done a very tough, fantastic operation in Venezuela. But that, I think, is the easier part. What next is the difficult part now. What would they do strategically? How do you say people behind me will control this country? Well, good. People behind you, 2 of them will control this country without boots on ground, without with even the administration was disliked. The opposition is stronger, but still there are people who follow him. We are not bringing it into another Afghanistan or getting into another of these quagmires, the color revolutions that brought countries into Libya. You see Syria. You see. I do not know what's going to happen to Venezuela tomorrow, sir. Today we are actually saying very good job done.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I mean, every time they put boots on the ground in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, they have failed. They have left with egg on their faces. But this idea of Greenland being very plausible. And according to Chidanand, I mean, I giggled when he said Canada. He said, this is your fault. You all don't take Trump seriously. I mean, are we really entering an era where... And it's true. If Trump wanted to go and take Greenland, what is it that Europe could do or would do? Nothing at the end of the day.
I would entirely agree with Chidanand. We should not only take Trump seriously, we should also take him literally, because he stands by his word. We have been used to saying he's unpredictable. He's entirely predictable. You know exactly what he says, he does. Now, the timing may vary. One may come before the other. But in the case of Greenland, he's certainly one of the countries he's targeting. We should never forget Canada. It's for Canada. No wonder Canada is also extremely cautious and careful about what it's saying. But on the issue of lobbying, I'd like to point out that lobbying has always been there in the US. But now it's come down to bribing. It's not just lobbying, but bribing is more important today in Trump's America than lobbying was. So
you want to elaborate? You want to elaborate on that?
Well, you see, you look at the investments that have been made. You said that Japan will invest $500 billion and America will decide, Trump will decide where the money will go and the profits will go to America. Similarly with Korea. And then there was this person who had given Qatar gave him an aircraft, a whole Boeing. Then somebody gave a gold Rolex to him and he's taken all that. Now, these used to happen in banana republics. But this is what is happening in the United States of America. So we must realize that this is a different world we are living in, a world in which the US doesn't care for NATO. So while the 3 big powers can decide to divide the world between themselves, but the smaller powers, smaller countries also have to survive. So we have to make do and try and see what we can do. We have the German president coming here in a few days' time. Our prime minister was in Japan just last year. So these are the countries that we have to look to and see what we can do to make the world slightly safer than these 3 big powers that are riding roughshod over the global system.
That's right. I think we can all agree on that being the bottom line. And as General Sharma said, it's a turbulent age. As they say, brace for impact. That has to be the sort of defining motto of the times we live in. Brace for impact, but also prepare better for impact. Some of it is predictable, I think, is what we're hearing our experts here say. Thank you so much, gentlemen, to Ambassador Sinha, General Sharma, and Chidanand. Always a pleasure. See you all soon. Thank you. See you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.